Team, are you ready for some deeply involved, thoughtful, subtle, and profoundly involving tactical strategizing? Yeah, me neither. Let's get some Warriors action going instead, in this episode of Music Arcade.
Mooks must die! Hello everyone, and welcome to Music Arcade. I'm Galo the Sound Guy Firestone.
And I'm the one and only runner that totally didn't flub his line just now.
And you almost flubbed that one too.
Yes!
Nice.
I'm doing very well. How are you?
Actually pretty good. So the timing of this episode is kind of auspicious. We're going to be talking all things Dynasty Warriors today, or specifically Warriors games developed by Koei, and that last one is actually a fairly important distinction at the moment. But between last night, when we were supposed to record this, and today, Koei announced the third and likely final DLC for Fate Samurai Remnants, so that's coming out in a few days.
Oh, that's great. Didn't know about that.
Yep, and tying it all the way back around to Dynasty Warriors, and right in time for Dynasty Warriors Origins, apparently we're getting Rogue Rider Zhao Yun. And I'm like, oh, okay, please come back with this Dynasty Warriors 5 moveset. I missed that moveset.
Don't remember if I played that one.
3, 4, and 5 kind of had the same moveset throughout, just expanded upon. So if you played any of them in there...
They were pretty samey until they decided to change, vastly overcorrect, and then got the cruise speed just in time to change things a bit too much again. But let's start from the origin of all, at least for each of us. How about that?
I think that's a good plan. But before we do that, I do want to just say real quick, I've been a huge fan of this franchise for, God, 20 years now, feels like. And it's just always been...
Judging by date of release, it's more than 20 years for me.
Oh, God. Yeah, I think I was, like, still in high school or just out of high school. I remember it was PlayStation 2.
Middle school here.
Which says an awful lot about how long ago the PlayStation 2 was. That makes me feel old more than anything.
That it does.
But yeah, no, this is just a comfy action series. And I mentioned my love of beat-em-ups, and that did translate into my love of Dynasty Warriors. They're very... There's enough shared DNA there that, you know, liking one and liking the other, not that far off. And, a couple of their spin-offs I feel like I was specifically and explicitly the target audience for, which is great. So...
Though that is not to say, unlike what we covered in the intro, that we can't like both, as you were just saying, I believe, before we started recording.
Oh, yeah. 100%. In fact, I was even talking about how I kind of was getting an itch to play Stellaris again and do another run of that. So, like, yeah, I like my big think strategies, and honestly, the best Warriors games are ones where you do have to think. They're not just as mindless as the detractors seem to think they are.
Yeah, absolutely. And, like, if they are just silly press the buttons and see many mooks die fun, they've got that nice cycle of pretzels and beer covered, where one gives you a craving for more of the other, and vice versa. So you can get something that's very involved, very thinking, and then you have a little bit of a mental rest by just murdering mooks and pressing buttons. And when you are getting bored of that, you can return to the very involved and heavy skill-reliant play.
Yeah. That's kind of one of the reasons I love the franchise, is that it does do both very well. Which kind of leads me to... I guess I may as well start off with how I discovered this franchise. I've told this story before, but I feel like I need to tell it again. And this should tell you just how long ago this was. I was hanging out with a friend at Universal City Walk in Los Angeles at the Sam Goodies, which had a demo kiosk of...
Oh.
And I saw this bald dude with an axe running through a snowy battlefield, mooks on both sides everywhere. That was the thing that really got me about it, was that it wasn't just beating up them, is that you had an army too. And protecting them was also kind of part of that. Less so in Dynasty Warriors 2, which what this turned out to be, than later games. Because in Dynasty Warriors 2, as long as your main camp didn't fall, it doesn't really matter what else happened. But later ones expanded the objectives and the fail states quite a bit.
In fact, they did.
And I just sort of fell in love with it. And I'm just like, what is this? It just sort of stopped me in my tracks. And I've been a fan ever since. Funny enough, I'm pretty terrible at Dion Wei throughout the ages. He's never really clicked with me in anything other than Dynasty Warriors 7 specifically. Because in 8, his other EX move, I just couldn't make it work.
Yeah, actually, that made me wonder, do you have a main of sorts? Like, if a game is starting and you haven't seen anyone's moveset, you're like, okay, let's see how this guy plays, and then we'll talk.
Yeah, absolutely. And that would be the first guy I beat Dynasty Warriors 2 with, and that's Xiahou Dun.
Oh.
I remember in Dynasty Warriors 2, I tried a few people here and there to make them work. I tried Zhao Yun, Zhou Yu, couldn't quite get them working. But Xiahou Dun with his big sword was the first one I'm like, okay, I kind of get this now.
Yeah, and honestly, he has a style that flows pretty well, that's very balanced, and that just feels a bit ahead of his time when it came to the early Dynasty Warriors game, where a lot of other movesets that, especially the more flawed ones, balanced out like that.
Yeah, he's always had like a very unique feel to him, which I think is, as you said, kind of ahead of its time. There have been other great sword characters or other heavy sword characters since, but none that ever quite felt like he does, especially going into Dynasty Warriors 7 and 8 and the EX moves he gets in those games. And while I have like other future favorites, we're going to be talking about one of them later, he's always kind of come back to, okay, he's the guy I rely on to learn the ropes. And him having a fairly generic moveset in Dynasty Warriors 6 Empires, which I did play, was not my favorite. But then again, a lot about Dynasty Warriors 6 wasn't my favorite, so...
Yeah, and in general, it's good when you're starting a fighting game to get the fundamentals down with the Ryu of the game. It's kind of like that here, too.
Yeah, when I play Street Fighter, I start with Ken. When I play Dead or Alive, I start with Bayman or Mila. When I play Dynasty Warriors, I start with Xiahou Dun. When I start with Samurai Warriors, I start with Kenshin, etc. Like, yeah. It's good to have that baseline.
Exactly.
But getting back to Dynasty Warriors 2 itself for a minute, that one was definitely, like, the test bed for what came later. Like, looking back on it, it wasn't that incredible of a game, but at the time, it was just so different, and there was so much potential there, and, like, right out of the gate, they went hard on the soundtrack. They knew what they were doing.
Right out of the gate, I get it.
Oh, for crying out loud. Okay, fine. Wasn't intentional, but fine. Yeah, we'll go ahead and talk about it. Hulao Gate, specifically the Dynasty Warriors 2 and 3 music for Hulao Gate, which was, as a result of the Sam Goodies thing, the song I think of when I see a snowy battlefield. Even though, generally speaking, the Hulao Gates over the years have had good music. I mean, the whole franchise has good music. I don't really know what I'm saying right now.
Yeah, like, it's an early battle, and essentially, it's... Most of the campaigns, you start with either that or the Yellow Turban Rebellion.
Actually, in Dynasty Warriors 2, you always started with Yellow Turban, and then you did Hulao Gate, and then 3 stages were unique. I mean, I say unique, but, like, every faction had 3 more stages after that. Wei had Guandu, Chubi, and Wujiang Plains. Hefei was only on the Wu route unless you were on free mode, etc., etc. This was something they fixed. You know, obviously 3 had a lot more stage options, etc. But, I mean, again, as a test platform went, yeah, you only had 5 stages. So, if you wanted to play Changban as... If you want to play Changban as Wei, you had to play it in free mode.
I see.
Because that was only for Shu at that point in time. nor do we have another one of my favorite tracks, which will not be talked about today, Chase the Wave from Dynasty Warriors 3, the Wayside Chanban music.
There are a lot of tracks we couldn't include because we're trying to stay reasonable on time, but we basically have an agreement at this point where if there's an Ediless episode at some point in the future when he's returned, going back to the Warriors series as a whole, expanding or narrowing the focus is going to be a pretty safe pick.
Yeah,
so get ready for more.
Yeah, honestly, no joke. I almost have as much to say about the various Dynasty Warriors soundtrack as I have to say about the various Final Fantasy soundtracks, which should say a lot.
Yeah.
And they're all so different, too. Like, yeah, Dynasty Warriors has a musical identity, but that musical identity is very different from Samurai Warriors, which is very different from Warriors Orochi, which is very different from the various spin-offs. It's like...
And it kind of loops back to what we were saying about picking a character at first. When you have the established baseline, seeing where it goes from there, where the refinements are, is so interesting. Here the baseline is more likely a guitar line, but the idea is there.
Or a literal bass line in the case of Hulao Gate. Like, I love this bass on this song.
Yeah.
Like, this bass is up there with Tsukiyomi's boss music in FF14. Like, it's just that good.
It just gives kind of a grounded air to the whole battle.
It does. Love the guitar solo melody line. I will say one thing I never noticed about this song is that, yeah, the hi-hat is a little out of control. It's kind of extreme, and I know that's just me being a mixing nerd, but, like, it feels like it's kind of overpowering at times, which I never really caught on to before listening to it, like, hard listening to it today. It's a very comfy song for me. Like, it's just one of those, like, I kind of listen to it at any time.
Yeah, exactly. It sends you back.
Yeah.
You certainly sent me back.
It's very nostalgic in all the best ways.
Since it's a theme shared by the Dynasty Warriors you started with and the one I started with.
Yeah, that's one of the weird things, is that Dynasty Warriors 3 was literally just Dynasty Warriors 2 plus a whole lot of stuff. They did change up, like, the maps or anything, but any song that could be reused from 2 was reused from 2.
Yeah, and it's funny to think that we have the same Hulao Gate song in our head, but it represents two very different stages.
Yeah. Yeah. For the record, this isn't something they ever really do again. Dynasty Warriors 8 does bring this full circle and actually have, like, remixes for stuff or use older songs in their hypothetical routes. But generally speaking, they almost never just slapped on a song that was already in use for no real reason. And I kind of blame that on it being the very start of the franchise.
Without counting, of course, the fighting game that I certainly haven't played.
Neither have I, but that's... You see, that's kind of part of the problem of the history of Dynasty Warriors. In the West, Dynasty Warriors 2 is a sequel to the fighting game. In Japan...
Shin Sangokumusou.
Yeah. In Japan, Shin Sangokumusou is not the same as what was Dynasty Warriors 1, which I think is just Sangokumusou.
Indeed.
So we end up with a weird numbering scheme as a result of this.
Yes. Which is even more funny when it happened again with Warriors Orochi for no good reason.
For no good reason!
Yeah, I think it's Musou Orochi's Z in Japan.
No,
like
Z is something different, and we will actually be talking about that later.
Sure, let's go with that.
Yeah, this is gonna get interesting. Yeah, anyway, so that's my start to the franchise. How about yours?
Well, as I said, my first Warriors game was Dynasty Warriors 3, but that's not my start to the franchise as a whole. We have to go back just a little bit more, because my first point of contact with the Koei-produced Three Kingdom related games was Kessen 2, actually. I saw it and co-played with it when hanging out with at one of my friends' home.
Yeah, I had a very similar experience, in fact, although I did play it after Dynasty Warriors, and that was me and my friend Alex played Kessen 2 together when he was a roommate of mine, actually.
Ah, I see.
And very similar experience there.
Yeah. Wasn't a roommate, but he's the friend in the village that I tended to hang out at.
Yeah, I remember Lu Bu's route. Trying to actually kidnap and recruit Shu Huang was a whole thing. And I could never get it to work right.
Yeah. Here, basically, I discovered a lot of games at that friend's house. I played the Final Fantasy 8 through 10 at his place. Discovered plenty of other games, and it's funny. There's a lot of organic two-person memes that went back from this era. Most of those I probably forgot since then. But what facilitated that is that those games were dubbed in French, and the dubs, basically the French dubs are a perfect adaptation of the level of quality of the English dubs.
Dynasty Warriors 3's English dub was a thing.
Yes, it was. And the French ones were matching.
Nice.
For both that and for Kessen 2, which was also extremely ham-heavy and had the bonus points of making the entire Sun clan have a heavy southern French accent because they were from the southern part of China.
We didn't get that in the English dub. In the English dub, they were, standard English speakers, but
yeah, no, that's an extra little bonus just for us.
That's pretty great.
Yeah, and so I really liked the setting, I really liked the weirdness and the over-the-top action, and so when I learned that there was not a strategy game but a beat-em-up, I was intrigued. First because how does that work? I had the direct comparison point to Final Fight and wondered how that translated into 3D. I remember that oddly clearly for some reason.
Yeah, as it seems like we figured out the same thing, and that's the shared DNA with beat-em-ups. So, if that's the first thing that came to your mind, yeah, obviously, people who know their gaming history are probably going to be figuring that one out eventually themselves.
Exactly. And then I was like, oh boy, I can't wait to see those characters in another situation. And hey, we can play as the three camps instead of just Liu Bei's army or Cao Cao's army, as he was known at the time.
As he was known at the time. They didn't start fixing that translation until, I think, 7 for sure, but possibly 6.
Yeah, I think so. And so, first impression, 1, how come the Wei are blue now? They're the red guys. Of course they are.
Well, they were red historically, but
and in Kessen 2, where I think it was more a decision related to making the clear good guys green, bad guys red happen.
Yeah, although Dynasty Warriors thankfully takes a more even hand and doesn't just make Cao Cao into a just generic bad guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Up to the fact that by the time we hit 7, he's outright sympathetic.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I would argue before then, but at 7, they clearly were everyone has their good and bad points. There's no bad guy here.
Yeah, absolutely. And they will do that to an even greater degree later on, but we'll come back to Samurai Warriors a bit later.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So there was the color impression that was already a bit strange, but fun. And then I was like, oh boy, I can't wait to see how my favorite character from Kessen 2 plays out. Now, the character in question gets introduced in that game by standing atop a horse, rushing towards an enemy army, jumping off the horse, while front flipping, going through the entire army, but continues to run forward, except there's just now a stripe of people that stopped moving because they're dead because of all the front flip that character did through the army. And I was like, cool, that is now a life-changing experience.
Was that much out?
No. And that was Mei-san Yang. And so I couldn't wait to see how Mei-san Yang played in Dynasty Warriors 3.
I have no
Mei-san
recollection
Yang
of this
was
character.
an original character created just for Kessen 2 that never appeared in any other game in the series since then.
I was wondering who that was. I'm like, that name doesn't sound... I know there's a San Yang in... Oh, no, that's San Zhang in...
No, that's Bao San Yang, I think, in
Oh, yeah,
one of
she's
the
in
games.
7. Yeah, she's in 7 and 8.
Right. And that's not the same character.
Okay.
It's so far removed that it might as well not be. But, yeah. I basically had to find a lot of my marks, but thankfully the game kind of gelled with me in its own different ways. Quirks and all. Like, it had so many things that just wouldn't pass in the design, but that somehow I both learned and practiced out. For instance, when beating an officer, the quality of the item or weapon dropped increased depending on the level of uninterrupted combo you did. So, you had interest even after the officer's death because it only counted by the time the body disappeared. So you had an interest once you defeated an officer to keep juggling them until you reached a 64 combo.
There were some characters I was better at this than others.
Yeah. Although the C2 and C5 universally were functional at the very least.
Yes.
But
that was when they started codifying what those do.
Yeah. And the fact I still know that even though I haven't touched the game for 20 years, some give or take, should tell you something about how much I got invested in it.
Uh-huh. Oh, I have all sorts of those same kinds of stories, believe me.
Oh, I think
any long-term fan probably does.
Exactly. It's like, yeah, either you get it or you're not getting into it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as for my musical pick, I just picked something that felt representative of the series as a whole, and Arena, at this point, is essentially one of the two main themes of the games, I'd say, with the other being Lubu's theme.
Which we didn't cover. We chose not to pursue Lubu here. I don't understand why we both came to this conclusion, but here we are. There is no Lubu. We are not pursuing Lubu.
I did that for two reasons. This was a very pointed decision.
Okay.
Well, three reasons, actually, now that I think of it. I thought of a third good reason, so let's pretend I thought of it from the get-go.
Cool.
One, if we're going to cover the whole series, we might as well put Lubu's theme and Tadakatsu's theme side by side.
Definitely agree there.
So that would have taken 2 slots.
I actually had Tadakatsu's as one of my themes before I cut it for very similar reasons. Go on.
Yeah, exactly. 2, I think we've covered one of those mixes in a previous episode.
I'm sure we have.
And 3, we are finishing this episode with a Lubu equivalent in another game that, in a side game.
Oh, I was not aware of that, as it's one I have yet to play, even though you put it on my pick a game list, and I intend to get to it. It's gonna open up fairly soon, actually, because I mentioned earlier, Samurai Remnant is wrapping up. So
yeah, exactly. And you have been nose down to the grind when it came to catching up on those pick a games.
I have been. I just finished Chained Echoes not too long ago and was deeply impressed by that game. You know, it occurs to me during our throwback Dynasty Warriors 2 segment, I forgot to bring something important up. For that game's 10th anniversary, they released the entire game, so to speak, all of the stages, including all of the pickups, as DLC for Dynasty Warriors 7.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. which, given that Dynasty Warriors 7 itself was a throwback and a soft reboot, actually kind of dovetailed really well, and as a result became kind of the best places to grind. But getting back to Arena in particular, I've got to be honest, I've never actually really liked this song. I don't want to say it's a bad song or anything, but that intro just got on my nerves after a while.
Yeah. I find it pretty catchy. Like,
it is definitely
pretty
catchy.
Chill, and then it feels like an instant classic.
It gets remixed a lot. I think Dynasty Warriors 8 had a particularly good remix of it.
Yes, I certainly stumbled upon it in my search.
Yeah, but honestly, the original song in 3, my biggest memory of it is grinding Sun Tzu and being like, they didn't pronounce it like that back then, but I'm just trying to go with the more modern translations, was grinding Sun Tzu and like constantly hearing this one on the stage to get his final weapon, and I'm just like, would this song shut up?
I mean, that wouldn't be the last song that overstayed its welcome while you were grinding.
No. That's another thing we'll be talking about later, I might add.
Oh, yes. But nothing all that specific to comment about it. It's just, it feels like it's, if nothing else, the essence of the Dynasty Warriors musical identity.
Yeah, it's got the like cool intro, it's got the fun guitars. It's there. It's very much in the same vein as Hulao Gate from 2 and 3. Or not Hulao Gate, sorry, Yellow Turban Rebellion from 2 and 3. It's kind of light and fluffy with some guitars. Yeah, like it's not too tense.
It's a bit by the book, but it very much does the job.
I mean, you say it's by the book, but it basically wrote the book, let's be honest here.
Yes, true.
It's only by the book because that's how the musical identity of the franchise chose to progress from here on out. And while there are definitely heavier songs, like, God, half of Dynasty Warriors 6 would qualify as hard rock at that point.
Oh, yeah.
But there aren't really any, it's one of those things where it sounds generic because it started the thing that everything else is copying.
Yeah, it's the point where it's hard to tell if the music is designed to get you in the mood for mook murder, or if the association happened on a subconscious level.
And on the subject of musical identity, let's start talking about our first non-Dynasty Warriors with some pretty heavy shift in musical identity compared to Arena. And that would be Samurai Warriors 1 with Kawanakajima, which was the first song I ever heard of Samurai Warriors, and like, this is totally different, and this owns.
It definitely owns.
I forget in Samurai Warriors 5 whether it was this one or Mikado Gahara that they skipped for some reason when they had, like, everything else.
It was this one. Mikado Gahara had, on the contrary, the 2 versions with different instrumentation depending on if you play as the Tokugawa or as
the Takada. Yeah, I was very shocked that they omitted this one because this is actually like
for the record. Yes, I remember that specifically because I stumbled upon it in my searches and decided not to include it because we already talked about those 2 picks in episode 16. No, 17.
Wow, nice.
50 episodes ago, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I love this song. This song has energy to it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, the previous song, it kind of establishes this identity. This one makes a statement about it more than anything.
Yeah, like, it establishes Samurai Warriors is a lot grittier.
Yeah. It's very different, and it kind of feels like it's the company that heard that the previous couple of games were accused of being a bit samey and said, we can do things differently, we can stay in the genre and still prove that we can shake things up completely.
I have a lot of affection for Samurai Warriors 1 and 2. They were a really big departure in the best possible way, and this establishes Samurai Warriors in a different way musically than Dynasty Warriors, which is to say, throughout the franchise, the songs actually, for the most part, stayed the same. They just remixed them. There were a couple of exceptions to this, OK Hazama being a big one, and we'll talk about that in Warriors Orochi 3 in a bit. We'll talk about that in a bit, sorry. OK Hazama didn't actually do this, but a lot of them did, and this was kind of one of the big, like, favorites that anytime this showed up, it was usually a banger, which is why its omission from Samurai Warriors 5 really threw me off, because of all the songs to cut, they cut this one?
Yeah, which has such a strong intro and such a perfect duel of types of instruments, which again kind of define the identity of the series musically.
Yeah, this would be called EDM even within the last 10 years, but back then I think it was just called techno. I don't think we had like the actual phrase EDM back then.
I absolutely refer to it as techno with Japanese instruments back then. In French, but...
I'm sure. Yeah, no, I always kind of come back to this one and I'm like, yeah, no, this one's one of the really cool ones. I remember not really liking the Samurai Warriors 1 version of Nagashino, but they fixed that over time. Stuff like that.
I will say it's weird because I didn't play Samurai Warriors 1. I started with 2 as well. It looks like I am fated to start any Warrior series one entry later than you.
Did you start with Return of the Demon King in Warriors Orochi, or did you actually play Warriors Orochi 1?
I actually played Warriors Orochi 1. So I guess that one broke the trend.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah, but yeah, given that I'm used to the 2 versions of Kawanakajima, and those 2 versions are very close, but the difference is I hear them very clearly.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I like about Samurai Warriors, is the fact that they're willing to do this. If anything, it serves as a precursor to what eventually became my fascination with Fiercest Warrior in the Like a Dragon franchise.
Yeah, and it's kind of made me think, for a more recent comparison, about Nioh 2, of all things. Because by establishing that strongly a certain look for the characters and a certain themes for the battlefield, they can change the battlefield completely to vary the gameplay, but the identity remains the same, with the characters and with the music serving as anchor point, which means that whatever they do change feels huge. And to the point where when I saw what's the name of the Kimari guy again?
The Kimari guy? Oh, Kimari guy.
Yeah.
Imagawa. Yoshimoto Imagawa.
Thank you. When I saw Imagawa being this threatening monster in Nioh 2, and to a slightly lesser degree, and surprisingly slightly lesser degree for that matter, being very threatening in Samurai Warriors 5, it just helped to have these points of reference and to use them to realize that much clearly. Oh, that's different. They're bringing a lot of focus to that.
Seeing guys like Yoshimoto, like, that's the thing. We established that Samurai Warriors started with a grittier identity than Dynasty, but
yeah,
it also introduced the first, like, super joke character in the form of Imagawa, and
absolutely,
boy, did I just hate him right out of the Samurai Warriors 1 XL gate.
I would say the closest Dynasty Warriors had to a joke character was probably Xoshu.
Probably who?
Xoshu.
Oh.
The big guy with the mace.
Zuchu, yeah, okay, sorry.
Yeah.
You pronounced that like I couldn't tell if you were talking about him or one of the two Chows. Yeah, but...
Xushu.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I would say that is definitely the closest thing to a joke character, but as Dynasty Warriors 7 shows, you can absolutely play him seriously, and it doesn't detract from the character at all.
Absolutely.
You cannot do that with Yoshimoto Imikawa. He is just too far gone. Until they just scrapped him and started over and made him actually interesting.
Yeah, and kind of went for the joke perception, and when things actually start, when the action actually starts happening, you're like, oh no, he's crazy, that's bad.
Yep.
And that kind of means that the series is able to use its legacy to give perspective, which I think is interesting, an interesting way to make the franchise just exist in a longer period than each of its individual games.
Yeah, and I think that sense of legacy really actually informs and boosts the gameplay of both games. Now, my pick was a very, like, emblematic pick. It was very, you know, very heavy on the techno, very angry. I didn't really spend much time talking about the song. But your pick is a little, slightly wackier a little bit, almost?
Yeah, and I picked it not just because of the song itself, so much as the way it happens. Marking a departure from how the songs are used at all. So that's the defense battle theme from Samurai Wars 2.
Right. I feel like I remember this a little bit from Odani Castle, but like I couldn't say that to a certainty.
Yeah, and it's harder to pin down because no stage starts with it.
Yeah, it's a generic response theme. I say generic,
exactly.
But yeah.
Which kind of underlines the heavier and heavier emphasis on objectives, because you don't just make a beeline for the enemy general. Like, I think back in Dynasty Warriors 3, you even had the ability, if you played one of the heads, like if you played Cao Cao in a way scenario, you were the main objective, so you could completely ignore all armies, all objectives, and just as long as you were alive, you could continue on.
Yeah.
That's why they introduced the replacement generals eventually.
Yes, and I think that was actually a very good move, but let me tell you, my favorite story about this was trying to get Yue Ying's final weapon in Dynasty Warriors 4. I had to have my buddy Alex, I mentioned it before, the one I played Kessen 2 with, literally just pick up Zhuge Liang, because it was on the Nanman stage, which in Dynasty Warriors 4 was terrifying.
Oh, yes.
And I'm like, I gotta play this on hard? Seriously? Just do whatever you can to survive, and let me handle this, otherwise you will lose.
Yeah.
So, yeah, being able to take over the stage leader and not have to worry about a game over because stupid AI is stupid, that had tactical advantages it was worth pursuing in the earlier games of the franchise.
And having the foresight to actually ride one of those enormous elephants helps too.
Unfortunately for Yue Ying's weapon, she couldn't do that.
Oh, that's bad. But
yeah.
At least it helps Zhuge Liang survive. Which he'd need the help for, because I think his moveset was bad.
Oh, yeah, no, he didn't have a good one until 7, but the problem here was less that and more that the AI on hard mode would absolutely just dunk on him and all of the rest of Shu while you were at it. So
just melting through the officer's HP.
Pretty much.
Yeah, I remember 4, which is the first one I played at home, but that wasn't the best experience because I played it on PC, and it was Dynasty Warriors 4 Hyper, which went about as well as the first PC port of a game by a company like Koei would go.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, that sounds like a problem. That sounds like a problem waiting to happen.
Yes, it was.
Anyway, we got distracted with more Dynasty Warriors tangents. That's going to keep happening.
Oh, absolutely.
Between the two of us, we have so many stories.
Yeah, it's like playing those games gave us a lot of memories.
Or something like that, yeah. On the subject, we should talk about this. We didn't put any Samurai Warriors 5 music in here, but we actually played a chunk of Samurai Warriors 5 co-op.
Yeah.
If Dynasty Warriors Origins has a co-op, you interested?
I'm interested.
Okay. Good to have that
Especially since the fact that they have this nameless hero as a centerpiece. Having one or two would basically be the same scenaristically, so
yeah,
I think they can make it work as part of their game.
I think so. We'll see. We'll see if they could do it.
Yeah. I'm very much looking forward to that.
Same.
And again, it promises an interesting, kind of different perspective on things.
Well, you say that, but even back as far as Samurai Warriors 1, which we just talked about, they had a create a character function in that, which I thought was deeply okay.
Yeah, but they haven't put it that front and center since Bladestorm.
That is true. Whether or not that's good remains to be seen. This is Dynasty Warriors. Whenever they try something new, it can either be great or not great.
To be fair, they already showed that you could actually play as other characters, so it's going to be better in that front.
Okay. So then it's more of a Spirit of Sonata thing than whatever the heck that...
Yeah, no, they saw Cao Cao actually being played.
Okay. Oh, well, now I'm a lot more interested. That actually solves a bunch of problems for me. Now I'm concerned about movesets. Now I'm like, who's going to get what moveset? Uh-oh.
Yep.
I don't know if we're starting over or we're doing the smart thing or going back to 8's moveset or we're sticking with 9's or whatever the hell's happening.
Yeah.
Sorry, we're off on these tangents. Can we talk about Samurai Warriors 2 Defensive Battle? I'm so sorry.
Okay, Samurai Warriors 2 Defense Battle. It just brings a lot of urgency to the objectives. Like, they wouldn't feel nearly as significant if they were accompanied by this key change in music.
Yeah. And that's a technique they started doing as early as Dynasty Warriors 4, in fact, and just kind of propagated throughout the franchise, which I think works. But I also like in the later games, if you decide, I just want the stage to sound like this now, they let you do that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate the options, like, have an intended experience for when you experience it the story, but when you just grind in free mode, make yourself comfortable, play whatever music you want, put whatever silly costume you want on the characters, have fun.
Yeah,
because this series is kind of great at accommodating both those visions of just playing it for the grind and playing it for getting really involved in stories.
Yep.
Giving options for what isn't even two different kind of players, but two different kind of mood for the same players a lot of the times. It's just something that's nice to enjoy.
Yep.
No, if only the costumes weren't overly expensive and numerous before we get the definitive edition, that would be even greater.
That would be. Unfortunately, this was kind of what started my obsession with cosmetic DLC. So I have put a lot of money into Koei's pockets when it comes to costumes, I'll be honest.
Speaking of Koei's monetary practices, let's talk about Incarnation of Evil.
Ouch! Harsh, but true.
So that one is from Musou Orochi 1, which is indeed the Musou Orochi I started with, which again tried to reinvent its musical identity by still going very electronic music themed, but with a very different sound.
Yeah.
Instead of mixing it harmoniously with Japanese instrument, it went with some very specific sounds for, like, the...
They have a specific synth roll that they really like.
Yeah.
Kind of a twinkly arpeggiation.
And it goes very twinkly, but also alien, and it works to create the setting that you're in a weird situation. Like, it doesn't hide the fact that it's a weirdo crossover game. They are playing very explicitly about that, which I think is the right call.
Yeah. One Warriors Orochi 1 really impressed me back in the day. That was, to this day, my favorite Shu campaign of any game. Because it played so differently. It took that from a completely different angle.
Yeah.
And this was, at the time, the only new stage. More were added as of Rebirth of the Demon King / Warriors Orochi 2. But at the time, Koshi Castle, Orochi's hideout, was the only, oh
stage made specifically for the game.
Yes. So they took what started life as a budget title and made it really kind of interesting.
Yeah. They remixed a lot of things, and wasn't Zhuge Liang an antagonist for most of the game, for instance?
He was! Which I thought was really neat. Even in the Shu route.
An incredible call. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it kind of just turned everyone's, it kind of just turned everyone's stories on their head. I'm just going to go through the various ones. The main Shu plotline was actually a guerrilla force.
Yeah.
Oda Nobunaga was an outright hero. He was the leader of the rebellion.
Yeah, exactly, with the role of the Samurai Warriors' main antagonist going to Masamune Date, I think.
Yeah, he was... Yeah, it was him and it was Keiji Maeda, who were the big Samurai Warriors ones.
Yeah. Which is all the more funny when you remember that the big Lubu equivalent of Samurai Warriors didn't start until 2.
Mm-hmm.
Tadakatsu wasn't there in 1, and that was Maeda's role to be the big invincible guy.
I mean, he was there in 1, but he was kind of a secret character. He only showed up in the very late stages.
Yeah.
At that point, Tadakatsu's role was just to be a rival to Lu Bu, but he was almost always a neutral faction. Like, you'd end up fighting him too.
Exactly.
Like, the Wei campaign in Warriors Orochi 1 was actually my least favorite because, for the most part, none of my favorite characters were there because Cao Cao was supposedly dead. And thus Cao Pi took over, and while it had some very interesting moments, the line he gives Zhang Ho in recruiting him was blistering. It felt a little unearned to me. It wasn't, like, that was the one time where I preferred playing Shu over Wei, which is not common for me.
That's saying something.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the Shu have the goody two-shoes burden with them.
Yeah, and seeing them as a small force acting as a guerrilla faction against a much larger opponent, including their grand strategist, was actually super cool. Like, that was such a cool take.
Yeah, seeing Liu Bei do other stuff than relying on Zhuge Liang for everything is cool.
So Warriors Orochi 1 was really kind of revelation in that way, and that it really acted in a really kind of cool methodology.
Yeah, they had ways already to work and play and reinterpret the stories, which they are going to take even further in their own franchise later on.
Right.
But there they essentially went kind of like the intro to Smash Bros. With the little figurines and go pew 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 pew, bang bang bang.
Yeah.
And I say that as a praise, to be clear.
Oh, yeah, no, they're like, we have all these characters, let's mess around with their dynamics, why not? I'm like,
yeah.
Good choice. And that is reflected in the musical identity. It is very different from any other game in the franchise.
And it's all the funnier because this musical identity is absolutely not present in this one track specifically.
No.
This one track is all drama and gravitas, and it's going to go down, NG.
Well, it makes sense because this is the first time in any Warriors title in which there's an actual true big bad.
Yeah, not just a guy that had his motivation but ultimately had to lose for another will to march on forward. No, just I'm evil because I'm evil, okay?
Pretty much. Or at the very least, even if he does have motivation, and we will actually be talking about this shortly, he is, like, he's in a Dongjua level of evil. Like, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He's the bad guy here. He just doesn't get taken out 3 stages into the game.
Exactly. He can keep building up, keep scheming and being a threat until eventually either the resistance or a force that pretended to work with him to eventually turn on him work their way to meet him up and beat him at his own game.
Yep. Made for an incredibly satisfying finale. But you know what it didn't have at the time when this song happened?
What didn't it have at the time?
A proper final boss theme. You see, in the original Warriors Orochi 1, he didn't have boss music yet.
Crazy to think that.
Yep. And in every iteration, except the last... No, actually in every iteration, Orochi only gets new musics in the re-releases. So you mentioned Warriors Orochi Z. That isn't Rebirth of the Demon King. That's the PSP release of Warriors Orochi 1.
Ah.
And that's where it included a few characters who would come up later, like Sanzang, and the first iteration of Orochi's boss music. Similar thing happened in Warriors Orochi 2. A spin-off gave us Orochi X's boss music, which most of us only heard in Warriors Orochi 3. And
them and their re-releases, I swear.
Yes, and
I say that as someone that recently played Samurai Warriors 4D.
I need to play that. Does that include Samurai Warriors 4 too?
Nope.
No, okay. So I know there was a Samurai Warriors 4 too. I don't know much about it.
Yes, there was.
That one's just very weird to me.
It definitely was. I haven't played it, so I don't know how weird, but conceptually weird.
Yeah. However, like, it says a lot that it took a while for Orochi to get his own music, and...
Yeah, I think he was an idea of an antagonist before he became a character.
I would agree with that. That said, when he finally did get his music, it kind of rocked.
Oh, yeah.
This one, you can hear that twinkly, like, thing going on.
Yeah. Like, this one is unmistakably a Warriors Orochi theme.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, hearing that song come up when he shows up, pretty much universally great.
Yeah, it's so clearly a final showdown.
Yep. Now, I don't remember whether this was Warriors Orochi 3 or Dynasty Warriors 8, but one of them had a series of DLC of a live concert they played, where you could just use the live concert music as the stage mix.
Oh.
I feel like it was Warriors Orochi 3, because it included music from Samurai Warriors, and shockingly, and to my incredible pleasure, this song, Warriors Orochi's boss music.
If that's the case, then it must be not just from Warriors Orochi 3, but from the Xtreme release version. Because that one I didn't completely 100% the way I did with original Warriors Orochi 3. And you know me, I'm not a completionist as much as you, but the game was just so fun that it felt fun to go for the entirety of the game and its DLC.
I mean, that's the best praise you can give a game, is like, I want to keep playing more, I'm not done with it yet.
Yeah. 200 hours? I can do it.
Yeah. That was around, I think, when I put the combined versions of Warriors Orochi 3, which I'm still tempted to go back to, by the way. Like, we've been talking about it.
Like, I want to go back to it because I haven't played the 3 additional chapter, and, like, I'm a Sophitia main in Soul Calibur, you know?
Oh, yeah. Then you have to play it. She was a lot of fun.
That, and I also really like Stark's arc in Atelier Rowona to Minoru.
I actually had Sturkenberg's music as one of my songs, and then cut it me thinking that you would go for it.
I see.
I'm like, you're the Atelier guy. If anyone's going to pick this, it should be you. And then you didn't pick it, and I'm like, welp.
Yeah. To be fair, there's a lot of good competition.
There is. I mean, yes, look at the episode we're doing. But now I want to actually, on the subject of Warriors Orochi 3 Ultimate, remember how I said Orochi keeps getting themes? There's one last song that I put on here, Orochi's music, Orochi's X music, and then this other one, which shares some music called Half Line, which is a take on Optic Line, which is the character select theme. But more importantly, you can hear chunks of Orochi's music in there despite being a far more heroic theme. You see, Warriors Orochi 3 as a whole deals with time travel.
Yep, it sure does.
In Warriors Orochi 3 Ultimate, we meet a character named Ying Long, who is an old friend of Fushi's, who is Orochi before he was Orochi. And this is his...
That's just cool.
Yeah, and this is his music.
It's especially cool for me to have Fushi and Nuwa involved, because they were the ultimate unlockable characters in Dynasty Warriors 3.
Oh, yeah. Let me tell you, I actually played, in Rebirth of the Demon King, I actually replayed Orochi's route first, and seeing them show up as his final bosses were like, wait, what's going on now? You guys are back?
Incredible.
Oh, it was such a good moment.
And they have such good movesets, too.
You know, I don't actually like Fushi's that much. It's way too slow for me. I mentioned earlier when talking about Shahodun that other characters have great sword movesets and that his didn't hit the mark. That's kind of one of them that I was referring to.
Ah, I see.
But yeah, hearing the heroic version of pre-evil Orochi in the form of Ying Long, that was a really cool use of this leitmotif that I'm very, like... Again, this composition team keeps coming up with cool stuff.
Yeah, and heads up, that won't be the last time we'll talk about them making very cool use of an existing leitmotif.
Uh-huh.
Now then, how about we return to something a little bit more grounded for a while, because the series does go back and forth a lot, so we might as well do it.
Yeah, so after Dynasty Warriors 6, I was a little burned out on the franchise. I'm like, they're kind of going in a wrong direction, but I'm not sure what happened there. And my cousin Nelson convinced me, yeah, you should actually check out 7. Go for it. I'm like, all right, fine. I'll check out 7, see if it's good. Turns out it was incredible.
Good on you, cousin Nelson.
Thank you, cousin Nelson. Yeah, turns out it was incredible. And one of the things they did was they turned the writing way up for the first time in franchise history.
Oh, yeah.
I remember playing through 7 and dreading Mount Dingjuan because I'm like, wait, when did I start caring about Xiahou Yuan? When did that happen? What?
Yeah, and it's funny because, especially in Dynasty Warriors up till now, the writing was camp at best.
At best.
And Samurai Warriors was a lot more dramatically refined already. And Dynasty Warriors 7 feels like they really brought those writing sensibilities and made the players care a lot about individual characters within this Three Kingdoms conflict.
Yeah, which really worked. Like, 7 has, like, the true ending of the franchise, if you ask me. So when
Wasn't it the game where they also had some character appearance modifications depending on when you were in the scenario, like Shaodun actually having a model before he lost his eye?
Yeah, Shaodun had a model before he lost his eye. Zhang Liao had a black outfit for when he was still working for Lu Bu, stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's
a cool touch too.
And that would continue throughout the franchise as well.
It's something that happens over decades.
Yeah, it is. And Dynasty Warriors 7 was the first one to actually cover all the way to the fall of Shu and the end of the Three Kingdoms conflict.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's when they introduced that.
Yep. So when the expansion Xtreme Legends came out, I'm like, well, Xtreme Legends has never really done anything too, like, dramatic.
Yeah.
And they introduced 3 new characters, all from Wei, I might add. Well, 2.5 new characters. They reintroduced Pong De, who showed up in 5 and then set out 6 and Vanilla 7.
Yeah.
And then they added, finally, Guojia, and then they added the character who became my favorite character in all of Wei, at least while she had this weapon, and that is Wang Yi. I love Wang Yi for a whole lot of reasons. I love the fact that she was Wei's first female frontliner. Like, Wei had female characters before, but none who wore armor and got up in people's faces with a couple of giant swords.
Absolutely.
I love the fact that I don't like Ma Chao very much, so the fact that she calls out Ma Chao on being a jerk when everyone else is kind of partaking in the character shilling made me very happy.
Oh,
and
nice.
then there's her music, Teary Edge.
It really shows that they are going for some emotional reactions there.
Absolutely. And Wang Yi in particular always, I don't want to say threw me off, but the character music in 7XL was pretty on the nose. Pongda had this big rockin' track called Twin Axe, which is exactly what you think it is. Guojia had the more fun, lighthearted one. And then there's this song, which is very deep, very emotional. I love how it builds. Like, it starts with the almost ripped off from Terminator guitar riff, but then adds layers and adds layers and adds layers, and it just grows as the tragedy of the character as well as her anger does as well, culminating in my favorite guitar solo in the whole franchise, full of guitar solos. This song's just great.
Oh yeah, like, she's a frontliner, and this song feels like a song for a frontliner, first and foremost.
Yes. And they kept that through Warriors Orochi 3, and actually, even in Ultimate, added a stage or two with this song to kind of show her character development before you run into her in Warriors Orochi 3, because she was kind of out of nowhere in that game. However, there was one major problem, and that is, as of 8XL, they gave her a new weapon, the MA Piercers, which turned her into a stealthy assassin instead of the frontliner she was, and kind of ruined her character for me, and that made me sad.
Unfortunate.
I miss her Trishula. She was so good with them.
Yeah.
But,
A good heavy feels better than a good light character somehow.
I mean, it depends on the character. I wouldn't want, say, I wouldn't want Guansua to suddenly become a heavy. I like him as a light, but...
Yeah. No, but, like, when it comes to game feel and realization, I feel it's harder to make a heavy character feel good to play.
I definitely agree there, and I think that's one of the reasons I gravitate towards Xiahou Dun, because he's definitely a heavy character, but he feels great, as we talked about way back at the beginning of this conversation.
Yeah, and, like, there's a few moveset that kind of left an impression. I'd argue that Guan Yu's moveset in Dynasty Warriors 3 felt very heavy, but felt probably second to Lu Bu when it came to a feeling of power.
I guess I didn't really get to him. I don't want to say get to him. I didn't really get him compared to Zhang Fei or some of the other Shu heavy-ish ones. I think Shu kind of specialized in light attackers, and Guan Yu kind of felt out of place to me as a result.
But one of the heavy movesets that kind of I enjoyed the most was probably the heavy gauntlets for Link in Hyrule Warriors.
Hyrule Warriors is a miracle of a game, and I think to this day the Warriors game I put the most hours in between its 3 versions.
Yeah, and like, I'll probably give in an bait again as if I see it on sale the next time I see it on sale, because I got it on the Wii U, and my Wii U sure isn't working anymore. My Wii U's tablet.
I've talked about this before. I almost bought a Wii U for that game, and then the Nier Automata announcement happened, so that didn't. But I did end up playing it originally on the 3DS, I think it was. And then eventually on the Switch, because Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition is perfect. It's perfect.
It's incredible. They have so many diverse movesets with a system that feels so streamlined yet gives you so much, and they really go wild with what a character can do. Like, there's a Link that doesn't go down from his horse. There's a Link that doesn't go down from his bottle he's captured in while a giant fairy stomps all across the battlefield.
My favorite moveset to this day is... Well, one of my favorite movesets is Marin's, because she just summons Windfish. I'm like, okay. I have the power of whale. Good luck.
I look forward to discovering that, because that wasn't in you, which...
No, she debuted in the DS. Twilight Midna was also one of my all-time favorites. I think she also showed up in DS.
No, that did show up in the DLC for the original. And, yeah, she was a monster.
Oh, yeah. No, she's up there with, like, Athena and Shahodun and kind of just the biggest heavy hitters for me.
Yeah, like, here is a giant field. In this giant field, everybody dies. Good, let's proceed.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Hyrule Warriors is a real miracle of a game, and I'm so glad it exists. I think the only characters I didn't really like were Agatha and Girahim. I think those are the only two I couldn't quite figure out.
Agreed, except replace Girahim by Zant.
I actually really got good at Zant eventually once I figured out how he worked.
Oh. You are a stronger man than me.
He takes some doing, but when you figure him out how to use his madness meter, he's actually like, you could do some moves with him. Anyway, let's not talk about him because he's not really the relevant one here.
Yeah, and before we even go to who is the relevant one, just a game that has a character that's in red with a big spear with a very distinct silhouette that is an antagonist, that is the humanization of the dragon Volvagia, and decides that the big do not pursue enemy isn't going to be him, but it's going to be anytime a giant chicken appears on the battlefield. That's a game that understood the assignment completely.
Oh yeah, oh, cuckoos were a nightmare in that game.
Oh yeah. And there were entire missions dedicated to them due to the enormous maps. Plural.
Hyrule Warriors absolutely should not have worked, and it worked so well. This is one of those games where I think I was the target audience because I saw that first trailer and I'm like, this is happening in my lifetime? Oh god.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about another game where that occurred very shortly, but for now, let's stick with this one.
Let's return to the focal line.
Ha.
Which is the name of the track we're going to talk about. And I don't exactly even remember when it plays.
I actually checked the YouTube comments. It's the middle part of the final level. It's the middle part of Hyrule Castle.
Ah. Well, I also checked the YouTube comments because they made me realize something about the track.
What's that?
That the main through line after the introduction is actually a reprise of Zelda 1's castle dungeon theme.
How did I not notice that?
Compared to it's the same note. They hide it so well, and I had the exact same reaction you're having right now. How did they manage to hide something so big, so much in plain sight, and completely went under the radar for entire years?
Yeah,
It's witchcraft.
Yeah, it's witchcraft. Again, this is one of these franchises that, this is just kind of a miracle of a game. I would actually describe Hyrule Warriors, Definitive Edition specifically, in my top Musou games of all time, for good reason.
Yeah, like the distinction became a bit harder recently with some incredible crossover projects and mainline bold choices and entries, but for a while, what warrior game to pick was a pretty easy question. Do you want a lot of content? Good. If you want something in direct relation with the main series, go Warriors Orochi 3. If you want something that goes really differently but offers the best gameplay the series will have and certainly has at that point, go Hyrule Warriors.
Pretty much. And while its follow-up, Fire Emblem Warriors, was fun, it wasn't as fun.
Oh, I thought you were going to talk about Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity as his follow-up, which is an even deeper fall from grace, I'd say.
Oh, yeah, no, I did not enjoy Age of Calamity very much for a variety of reasons, but no, the direct follow-up was actually Fire Emblem Warriors, to the point where they ran on the same engine. I even called it Hyrule Warriors 2 with a different cast.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Like, all of the leveling systems was exactly the same, and it was like, okay, but there's just less giant monsters. I kind of miss the giant Dodongo.
Yeah.
I would like to see Korin fight a giant Dodongo.
They made boss battles work in a Warriors game.
That had never happened to that point before. Yeah, that's still such a miracle. They have figured it out now. They didn't figure it out in Warriors Orochi 4, but they figured it out now.
And just when you think that they basically have pulled off a miracle and gave us everything a Warriors game could give us, they go even wilder and get us to Persona 5 Strikers.
This is probably the game that's furthest away from being a Warriors game, but it is developed by Koei, co-developed by Sega, and it does have Musou points, but as I've said a lot, it does not play like any Warriors game I've ever played. It is a dungeon crawler. It plays like Raidou Kuzunoha 3.
Yeah, it's like if instead of JRPG battles, you had 30 seconds to a minute snippets of a Musou battle stage.
Yes, and that really works. And this is another one of these just absolute miracle of a game. I could go on for hours gushing about it. It is literally one of my favorite games of all time. Out of recent games that I've played in my life, that one's up there with Hitman.
Yeah, it's a game that takes what works with Musou and somehow manages to make a fun game around that instead of going with that.
Yeah.
And that becomes greater than the sum of its parts. And those parts are very good already.
Yeah, I did like Persona 5. I know I get down on it from time to time, mostly because how good it was kind of makes its flaws more apparent to me.
Yeah.
And the fact that Strikers fixed so many of them, including a song I didn't really like. I remember back in our Persona 5 episode, that was like episode 2 or 3 or something. That was way back in the day.
Yeah. And there was a running theme that we liked or disliked songs for very different reasons, and we had perfectly opposite opinions for most of the episode. We agree that this song is great.
Oh, yeah. Like, in my case, I never really liked the original Rivers of the Desert, so what's the solution to that? Just add MASA.
Yeah.
And it completely revitalized the song for me.
Yeah.
Like, one of the things I like about this, it knew what to remix and it knew what to didn't. They didn't touch Beneath the Mask. They did do a new version of Last Surprise, along with the old version of Last Surprise. But this song, they're like, yeah, it needs a go-over.
Yeah, because it's not an action song. The original.
No, it's a very kind of almost serene boss theme. And I don't like saying serene boss theme because that feels weird. I don't know. It felt...
To be fair, having your team fight a big cup is weird as well.
Okay, I will admit that. But yeah, the original version of Rivers in the Desert, I always called it monotonous. And I think it is. It is one of my least favorite songs on that soundtrack. Yes.
I will absolutely grant you that.
Yeah, it is one of my least favorite songs on that soundtrack. Adding the extra guitar line and ramping up the chorus the way this remix does, the Scramble version. Oh, man. Yeah. Oh, I like listening to this one.
They are weaving everything so hard around the song while definitely giving it the credit it's due for the part it does right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I picked like 4 or 5 different songs before I settled on this one, and I think I always knew I was going to settle on this one. I just tried to stop myself because we did talk about Rivers of the Desert way back in episode whatever, but I don't think I'd actually played Strikers by that point, so I don't think I really had this point of comparison.
Yeah, no, I don't think it was out.
Yeah. But I just want to say, at the risk of blaspheming, I always felt like a lot of the dungeon crawling music and secondary music in Persona 5 was on the weak side, to the point where I only really remember one dungeon theme from Persona 5.
I remember all of them starting from the third.
Fair enough.
I will admit the first couple of dungeons were a bit weak, but the moment Kaneshiro's dungeon starts, I'm fully on board.
Yeah, I wasn't. I didn't get on board until the boat. That said, oh man, are the dungeon themes, like, the second I heard Welcome to the Jail for the first time, I'm like, okay, we're going, I like this. And you could tell, still had that Shoji Meguro flair, but now it had the Dynasty Warriors guitars thrown in on top of it, and I'm like...
And it doesn't feel tacked on.
It doesn't. These two really make a good team.
Yeah.
And again, that comes back to Rivers of the Desert Scramble version, which just... Every bit of what these two could do as composers, they just took the best parts and put them together and made a real, just amazing song. I love this.
Oh, yeah.
And that's kind of what I feel about Persona 5 Strikers as a whole. They took the best bits of Persona 5, the best bits of Warriors, and they combined them into just a really underrated, just perfect gem of a game.
And honestly, the game was so different that it threw me off balance. I didn't persist with it, and I'm keeping it in my back pocket because I feel like I'm definitely going to have to get in the right mindset, actually knows this time what to expect, but this isn't going to just be Persona 5 but Musou.
Correct. This is not Hyrule Warriors at all.
Exactly. And with the right mindset, really enjoy myself.
I mean, again, I can't speak highly enough about it, but again, part of my enjoyment was actually the earlier PlayStation 2 games, the two Raido Kuzunoha Devil Summoner games.
Yeah.
So, if you could track down, like, Raido Kuzunoha versus the King of Abaddon, I would say is probably the better one. Maybe that'll help you get into the mindset of...
Oh, I think I can get into Persona 5 Strikers directly.
Okay, great.
Not that I don't think I would enjoy Raido Kuzunoha and King of Abaddon or something like that, because I've seen that, and if nothing else, its sense of style has left a lasting impression on me.
Oh, its style's great, but we're not talking about Shin Megami Tensei music right now. That also could be in its own episode.
Yes, it could.
But
although you're certainly more knowledgeable than me in the mainline SMT especially.
I'm sure I am. I've played no shortage of those games. But I've also played no shortage of Persona games. I've played no shortage of Dynasty Warriors games. And seeing them blend together both as a game and as a soundtrack in such a wonderful way. God, I love Strikers. Go play Strikers. If you haven't played Strikers, go play Strikers. And I don't just say you, Rat. I mean our audience in general. I'm a huge proponent of that game.
I understood.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, you know what series I have played a lot of, though? Fire Emblem.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not talking about Fire Emblem Warriors. I'm talking about the other Fire Emblem Warriors.
The only Fire Emblem game I played all the way through is Fire Emblem Warriors. So, oops, question mark?
Which is such a cool point of view, I find. And you having a peek into what will happen in Three Houses from strictly the Fire Emblem Warriors perspective is going to be so interesting to watch.
I
when you,
did watch a couple of streams of it where I was convinced Edelgard was automatically my favorite character because it's an action star. It's an actioner starring Terra Platt. Like, of course I'm going to like her. And I was convinced, I forget her name, but the fairy girl who was following Byleth around, I was convinced she was just completely evil.
No, absolutely.
That's all I really know about it.
Yeah. Wait, I think you meant... Oh, right, no. You meant Sophis, yes.
I don't remember her name. I remember, like, I don't remember her name. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I was confused for a bit because the protagonist from Three Hopes, Fire Emblem Warriors, also has a following companion, obviously evil character. Because yes, Fire Emblem Three Houses and Fire Emblem Three Hopes have different characters. They introduced a new one for the Warriors game, Shaz. Which is funny to say for me in French because that means chair, but that's completely unrelated to the point. It just went through my mind and I had to process it out loud.
No problem. It's not like we haven't had our share of tangents this episode.
Exactly.
From a position of not knowing what the heck is going on with this song, and this is the first time this has actually happened throughout this episode, this is just a really, really cool... It sounds like a final boss to me. Like, in fact, here's a weirdo take. I actually saw the Tales series battle system in my head as I was listening to this.
Oh, that's a pretty reasonable take, I'd say.
Yeah.
I can see that for like, the kind of boss battle you're supposed to lose in the first round or something.
Yeah, I was thinking like a late... like a late game, like hardcore one, like Van Grants from Tales of the Abyss kind of sound. Despite this not actually sounding anything like Motoi Sakuraba, we couldn't manage to sneak him in. And I did check the credits just in case. But yeah, love the vocals on this one. And it goes places. Like, I really like this track just in a general song kind of capacity.
And I picked it for two reasons. One is that most of the tracks in this game are excellent remixes, but remixes nonetheless, of Three Houses tracks. This one isn't, and that's because it's in a position you are never confronted in the original game. Because you have a different protagonist. But the protagonist from Three Houses doesn't go away. Byleth is the game's Lubu.
Oh, so this is the Lubu theme, huh?
Yep. You have an entire map at some point where you have to basically take control of an entire map's worth of siege weapons, trapping the character inside in order to have a chance to chase them away temporarily. That's the level of monster they put the protagonist from the original game on.
Nice.
It just works very well. And by the way, I'm not spoiling that. The very first tutorial map involves you going head-to-head against Byleth back in the mercenary days, and then wiping your entire unit of mercenary out.
Okay.
And that's just such a cool point of view. And again, it shows that even to this recent point, this game released in, I think, 2022 at this point, but they're still finding new ways to renew the franchises in this very well-established mainframe. And the main flaw people attribute to the Warriors series is that they are very samey. And I would argue, like you've mentioned before, that if you played 3, you don't need to play 4, or you don't need to play 2, and going from one game to the next again and again and again, especially after the fact, isn't really sensible. But
yeah, I can't imagine a year of Musou like we had a Year of the Dragon. I think that would get old real quick, especially with the older games.
That would be hell. But at this point, it's fair to say that each of the game and each of the side projects managed to go in very different ways, and that they're really using this core gameplay in order to twist in the direction to see where it goes. And sometimes it doesn't always land. It certainly didn't land on the Berserk side game, and I think the Fist of the North Star one was a bit disputable.
I played it briefly, but then my 360 crashed and I never got back to it. I thought it was okay.
Alright. But my point is that sometimes they also strike gold, and I think that's great on a gameplay level and on a setting level where things get weird, and that they had their backs against the wall when it came to the need to renew themselves about a decade and a half ago. And they've kind of went through the wall and saw how many directions they can take things.
Yeah.
With the gameplay, with the settings, and indeed with the musical identity, where they can make techno/EDM work, they can make big old guitars work, they can make adapting existing songs and making new songs work. And indeed, they can make ominous chanting as you fight somebody you played for, depending on your level of dedication, 80 to 300 hours in an existing game work.
Yeah,
and that's part of why I love this franchise.
Yeah, no, it goes places. Like, as you were saying, I'm like, yeah, Hyrule Warriors is totally different from Arslan Warriors of Legends, which is totally different from Warriors of Troy. I forget what the full name of that one was, which is totally different from Persona 5 Strikers, which is, etc., etc., etc.
Honestly, at this point, I think I'll likely be interested into just checking what the next One Piece Warriors game is going to be like. Not because I have that strong an interest in One Piece, but because I'm curious what they do with that.
Yeah, as a Dynasty Warriors fan, that one has my interest. Though I will say, what I saw of it, like, I'm not too interested in that one just because the art style really just bothers me.
Yeah.
Like, it really bothers me. I do not like how these characters are designed at all. And most recently, we have Fate Samurai Remnant, which kind of hews closer to Strikers, but even then has its own, like, deep identity and its own deep musical identity. It's a lot of big orchestral pieces with Japanese instrumentation. I am honestly impressed how many different ways that Koei and Omega Force have taken this franchise. And
even refined its core as well. Like, one of the things that struck me when playing some of yours 4DX recently is how well thought out the simple fact of being able to switch and remotely command characters in order to always be in the action while a mission is going on, even though there's a lot of subtle objectives to focus on, is the kind of level of polish that only comes from a game that has been iterated on so many times.
Yeah. Oh god, I had a thought and it just left my head.
Oh, sorry about that.
No, don't be sorry. That you made a very good point, and I like that you made that point. Nothing to be sorry about. Just trying to figure my thoughts out. I was thinking because I gotta after this go out to the mall and buy like socks and shirts and stuff, like just basic stuff, and my brain just shut down.
Remnant?
Nothing about that again. I brought up what I needed to bring up there. Okay. I'll just say something else. Forget it. Yeah, right. And on the subject of iteration, I know I've already spent a fair bit of time gushing about this, but if I could please have a Strikers 2, I'd love that. Or even, my dream game at this point is a full flat-out follow-up to Persona 5 using the Strikers engine. Just give us all the other parts, the social links and the calendar thing, but also give us that combat engine and dungeon crawling style. That's like my dream game at this point.
Honestly, sounds like a fun time. Would it be alright if they make it as a side game or sequel or something to Metaphor with Fantasio, maybe?
If they do a Metaphor Warriors, that'd be hilarious.
Oh yeah.
I was just hoping to spend time with the Phantom Thieves again, but that's just, that's just me liking those characters. The fact that I got to ride around stages on Makoto's motorcycle, just, yes,
oh yeah,
thank you.
And thinking of Metaphor and the way it has this archetype system in your Persona where they're playing off with the classes, and the fact that they already have experience with classes being tied to moveset with the Fire Emblem Warriors games.
Yeah.
Means that there's something there, possibly.
I mean, at this point, given that they just managed to make One Piece work, right? Like, if they've managed to make that work, I have confidence that Koei can make just about any kind of spin-off work if they really want to.
Give us Ridge Racer Warriors, I dare you.
You know what? They would, and it would probably be good.
It would probably be good. I see no better way to conclude and no solid way to go from that to no playing. So let's just go cold in.
Okay, well, then here we go. Music Arcade, now playing. Now, Rana, you didn't put anything on the list, so it sounds like your list is fairly non-existent today.
Yeah, because the two main games I've played beside some gacha that didn't put anything new musically in the time since last episode, sorry. The two other games I've played I've been getting back a little bit into Elden Ring.
Okay.
Because
yeah, the DLC is coming out pretty soon.
DLC, and so I thought I might as well get back in the swing of things, seeing if I can try from the start with a different kind of build, and it's a fun time. I'm suffering a lot.
Yeah, I will say, I'm not a huge Souls-like guy, but I will, from the streams I've watched, the speedruns I've watched, Elden Ring has, like, the coolest art style of... It is such a unique art style. I'm super happy with how it looks. It does. I've never seen a game that looks like this.
Absolutely. And the other game I've played, just a little bit for now, but I'll get back to it, is the last DLC for Bloodstained. With finally a playable Dominique.
Right! I kept meaning to do that. Like, that's on my list, and I just haven't gotten around to it.
Yeah. And so far, it's pretty fun. It's also a classic mode, so slow movesets and the like, but inspired more by Castlevania 2 than 1. So it's not linear in its progression.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, so far it's a fun time. Collect new spells, go around, whip monsters, trade with monsters in cities, except when the moon enters a different phase, they turn aggressive and more powerful.
What a terrible night to have a curse.
Exactly. And so you have to manage your timing like that. But as far as the music goes, either the game is too recent to have the music available anywhere I could find, or it just that it's reusing the music that was already in the first classic mode. I'm not sure which one. I haven't played the first classic mode much either.
Yeah, I have less interest in classic mode than I have in the full castle exploration, just because my own style of gameplay kind of prefers that. But
yeah, and it's not like they fumbled the way the original game played. On the contrary.
No, I really like Bloodstained as a Metroidvania. I think it works wonderfully.
Yeah. And we still should totally do a little bit of the multiplayer mode.
We should absolutely do the multiplayer modes. I'm interested to see if we both end up playing as Miriam or if one of us plays as someone different.
We both play as Miriam.
I would love it if we could split it up, like one of us plays as Miriam, the other one plays as Zangetsu or Bloodless or something like that.
Yeah, although we can change the appearance according to whatever's available to Miriam within the save you choose as a base for the appearance.
I'm good with that. As for me, two games come to mind. First being, of course, Arknights. We, after retiring contingency contract, well, meet the new contingency contract, same as the old contingency contract, except it isn't.
Long-lived contingency contract.
Except, well, that's the thing. It isn't. It's just, it's Pinch Out again, but with a contingency contract flavor, and more importantly, a banger lobby track.
Yeah, because I think I heard you weren't that enthusiastic to start a new CC, and seems like you're enjoying your time.
I'm much more... I'm very surprised. This one actually respects my time.
Whoa.
Yeah, original CC, like... Arknights is not a game you really hard play every day. That's not how the game is designed. You hard play it maybe a couple of days out of the week, and then you just auto the rest of the week and get to live your life. Contingency Contract...
Star Rail has kind of a similar pace to it.
Yeah. Contingency Contract is not that. That one, in its original form at least, made you play hard every day because it had rotating maps, and it made you, like, there was a time gate on one of the medals, like you had to complete the mission before 1 week out of the 2-week event was complete. or you didn't get the medal.
Yeah.
They are not doing either of these anymore.
Well, that seems to do wonders to your stress level.
It does. So I'm actually, like, enjoying it. And the map itself was fun, and the music was good. I'm like, oh, this is... It's not perfect, but as far as improvement goes, this is the contingency contract I was kind of always hoping would be. So I'm actually having fun and enjoying the music again.
And hey, as we've talked extensively this episode, taking something that kinda works and making it a little bit better every time can go to very interesting places in the end.
Sure can. And then the other game I've been playing, my most anticipated game of this year thus far, Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance.
Yeah. How's it been?
Excellent.
Does it feel already pretty different? Besides the frame rate?
I mean, the frame rate's definitely better. Frame rate, draw distance, clarity, all of that.
Yeah.
Does it feel... I mean, yes, the story does diverge in some cool ways, and they already fixed my biggest problem... Well, one of my two biggest problems with SMT5 Vanilla, and that is we actually have real character development now, and I have party members.
Oh.
Which is not how SMT games work. I still have my rotating demons, but I actually have people on the team, and one of them's been great pretty much throughout the entire game so far.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. She's labeled as a guest, but so far she's been in every zone.
Yeah, like, in 4 I remember you could have a quote-unquote party member, but they occupied a special slot different from the demons in your party.
This time that isn't that. This time your guest characters are full-on characters, and they replace a demon or can be replaced by demons should the need arise.
Yeah.
One of those characters...
but in this game... from what I've seen, demons seem to have a lot of character by themselves, so it kind of blurs the line.
Yeah, like you go into the demon haunt, you can actually like get elements of their backstory, get elements of their history, and they actually kind of a lot of their comments involve their own mythology, and I'm just like, this is cool. This is a great feature. Yeah, no, this game is really, really well done, but one of the things it introduces is a new group of bad guys, the Kadishtu, who have their own boss music, and this boss music is super, super, super cool.
As the certified liker of weird themes, I predictably really like this one.
Unsurprisingly.
It's very unbalancing, it's very chaotic.
It is very chaotic, and I like it. The storyline hasn't super diverged yet. I mean, we've had a pretty big divergence as of the second zone, but not like we're still going through the second zone in the same order. It's not like been flipped on its head or anything.
Yeah.
But it feels a lot more complete as a game already. Now, my other big complaint about Shin Megami Tensei 5 was that the end game was way too boring and easy. Really hoping that doesn't happen here. I want the final boss to body me. I want to fight.
Yeah.
And
I heard in pre-launch interviews that they really basically had the vision of Vengeance's path divergence and the work they put on it as a way to complete the vision for the game they intended to release. So if that involves getting more attention to the challenges on the late game, that would be awesome.
That would be. I mean, so far, so good. Like, so far, they've kind of gone through a laundry list of my complaints and checked them off. This is the only one I can't confirm yet, and that's just because I'm only in the second zone.
When that happens.
Yeah, so, like, so far, I'm much more engaged than I was in original SMT5. This is the right balance of familiar and updated.
Great.
So, and it's on Steam. I don't have to deal with Switch's hardware anymore. Yay! Given how angry I am at Nintendo, that feels very good for other reasons as well.
Especially. Thank you for helping finance the game getting made in the first place. We'll take it over from here. Please don't sue us.
Pretty much, though. It does seem like their exclusivity phase is long gone, which is nice.
Yeah. And hey, direct tomorrow as time of recording, so we're timely on a little bit of Nintendo talk.
I mean...
So you can look forward to seeing the announcement of some games that you're going to play a little bit bit later when they release on another system than the Switch. And I can look forward to another 3 years of Three Houses discourse for some reason.
That's going to keep happening. I was about to ask if there was another Fire Emblem since Three Houses, because that's the one that's most rampant in my mind, but yeah, there was Engage.
Yeah, there was Engage. Which had amazing gameplay and incredible music.
And it just isn't as iconic as a game I've never played, which is Three Houses, which is saying something about that game.
Well, it doesn't help that it has terrible design and the most dog story I've ever seen. I love weird, I love camp, I love haha, it's kind of funny, but also it has its moment. I'm a Xenoblade Chronicles 2 fan. I can take a lot. Fire Emblem Engage was a bit much.
That is saying something. What you just said to me, that is really saying something.
Yes. And I mean every word.
I know you do. That's the scariest part. And I think that is all the time we have for our first of hopefully many Mook Murder Spectaculars of Music Arcade. Thank you all so much for tuning in. As always, you can find a playlist of the songs we talked about and how to contact us in the description.
Take care, everyone.
Have a good one, everybody. See you next time.